Before we get started, if you are interested in CBD or finding a new CBD supplier, I've partnered with Hopewell Farms and you can get 10% off this very high quality CBD. I take it every single day. It helps with meditation, it helps with my health in general, and we have 10% off with code Lily10 in the description. Also announcing the Ultimate DNA Activation Kit, which is a kit that I've included everything that I did to help activate my DNA, activate new psychic gifts and abilities, with 9 channeled sessions from the Pleiadians, Lyrans, Sirians, Inner Earth, and other beings to help you activate your DNA, raise your frequency and consciousness, align with your highest purpose and highest potential. I also have cord cutting and ancestral healing workshops, how to connect with your star family, a shorter DNA activation, and other resources available with the link in the description. Today we welcome Tyler Kiwala of Journey to Truth podcast. Tyler's joining us today to share some of his incredible experiences with inner earth beings, incredible experiences he had while exploring ancient Mayan ruins in South America. We will also discuss timelines and parallel realities. Please welcome Tyler Kiwala. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Star Seed Chats. Tonight, I have Tyler Kiwala here with me from Journey to Truth podcast. I'm sure most of you probably know who he is. And Tyler, so I just saw you speak at a recent conference and you shared a lot of really cool experiences that you had, and you're always interviewing people. So I thought it would be cool to give you the platform and opportunity to share more about yourself. So thank you for coming.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on. It is fun. I mean, I don't always get a chance to talk about it, and sometimes I don't always want to tell the stories because, as an experiencer, when you relive those moments, it's exhausting sometimes just retelling the story, because it's not like you're just telling a story. Like there's emotions and everything attached to it. So, um, I'm very like I choose carefully, who I decide to go on shows with and share this information. So I appreciate you reaching out and, let's just have some fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it really helps put some pieces of the puzzle together for people too, and just become aware of what's possible out there. Some of these experiences that we've had are just so mind-boggling, but it really just kind of helps things click. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And I got, I had a chance to share some stuff that I haven't really shared publicly in that presentation, but I kind of got in over my head and I put too much in the slideshow and I didn't have enough time. And they gave me plenty of time, but there's so much to cover. I don't realize how long it actually takes to go through everything. So it's better sometimes if somebody can just ask me questions and just get to, get more out of me that way.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, there was a few things that I wanted to ask you about, and it was your inner earth experience. You had a really phenomenal inner earth experience. So if you want, we can start with that. And then I want to go deeper into your experiences on your recent trip to Belize, which was pretty fascinating.
Yeah, Belize and some stuff in Colorado too, which was really fascinating. But the inner earth thing, a lot of people who are listening to this might have heard this story already, but I mean, it was profound. It was life-changing for me. And it wasn't even so much that I had the being, show up in my house, but it was the message that came with it. That's really the important thing of the whole story. But
And can I ask real quick, when did that happen?
This was 2018.
Okay. So where were you at in your awakening whenever that happened?
I was pretty early, but my awakening like kind of happened not instantly. Like I didn't just know everything, right? But it was like this remembrance, like all of a sudden, like once I was activated, like the information I heard after that, it wasn't like I was learning about it. It was like I was just remembering it. Like I would hear this stuff and I'm like, oh yeah, I know that already. I know this. Like things just like this inner knowing just started to become apparent. And so it was 2018. And, I've always been fascinated with inner earth. I read the Admiral Byrd Lost Diary in 2010 or 2011. I came across that diary on Before It's News, which is still a website. It's kind of like the tabloids of online, but back then I didn't really know much, and I just came across it. And now looking back, I know that wasn't by accident, but it fascinated me to no end. And I like told my sister, I'm like, you have to read this. Check this out. It's incredible. Like the earth is hollow. Like I had never heard it, but it resonated so deep to my core. Like I just felt like it was real. and everyone tried to debunk that, that diary. But then Billy
Mhm.
Woodard's testimony came out in 2012, where he was stationed at Area 51, and the first thing he was assigned to do was read the Admiral Byrd diary, which talked about the entire Inner Earth expedition, and like that kind of verified it if you believe Billy's testimony. But
Wow. So you can actually read his diary online?
yeah, well, you can buy the missing diary. This is it. I printed it out. It's very small. Um,
Okay.
it's very
Oh, cool.
short, but so there's a whole diary available. It's like a
Mhm.
flight log, and then this part was like obviously conveniently removed, and there's a whole conspiracy on whether it's legit or not. But apparently, according to some whistleblowers and some other people, I believe in my own intuition, I believe it's true.
Yeah.
But even this that's publicly available, I think is slightly different than the actual diary that's still like locked away in Area 51. Either way, that was my introduction to Inner Earth. Like I
Mhm.
knew it back then, I knew, but then I forgot about it. Like I was young, my mother passed away. I was going through all the attacks and stuff like we talked about the last time, and
Yeah.
I just forgot all about it until 2018 when I learned about the secret space program, and I just had this like overnight like aha moment awakening. Everything looked different. My friends thought I needed an intervention. They thought I was losing my mind, but I was just waking up to the reality of the illusion, right?
Yeah.
So I what happened next? Oh yeah, so then I started learning about inner earth. It came up again.
Mhm.
Like that obvious inevitably you're gonna find inner earth information when you're on your awakening journey. So it
Mhm.
started showing up again, and people were making it sound like, if you wanted to communicate with these beings, you can. Like it's all telepathic and they're already there. Like they're there to guide the surface. Like part of their mission is to assist the surface and their evolution of consciousness and whatever else it is, specific to the individual. So everything I was reading just made it sound so easy. It took a lot of focus. I even quit eating meat for a year. Like I was super serious about it,
Wow.
and I was meditating every night. I was imagining, I was listening to all these tips and tricks online, and they said like envision like an etheric cord coming from your third eye, connecting to the third eye of the individual you're trying to communicate with, and it really helps. Like it really helps with that connection. It helps you, gives you something to visualize, so you're not just like drifting off or aimlessly
Mhm.
like thinking about random shit. So that's what I would do every night for like a month straight almost. I would just sit there and I would try to connect with whoever was listening from inner earth. And it wasn't I had no success, but something told me to keep going. So I like became obsessed with it. I had to communicate with somebody. I wanted to know for myself. I'm tired of all these people having experiences and talking about it. I wanted to know for myself. And
Up until that point, had you had any other experiences? And I should have said this in the beginning real quick. So I've interviewed Tyler before, and on my previous interview, he shared a lot of, we'll say, kind of like darker experiences, where a lot of his other experiences. So this time we're going to focus on more positive type things. But up until that point, did you, or kind of like a healthy balance at least. Up until that point, did you have any experiences at all with that you were aware of with like ET beings or like ships or anything?
oh yeah, like the
Okay.
ET stuff, like I was having that time in my life, like with the awakening, it was just like somebody flipped a switch and I was having all kinds of crazy experiences.
Okay.
To the point where I had withdrawals, like when they stopped, like I actually missed them. I was like, what happened? Why did they stop? And it was later told to me through a session that somehow or another I was remembering too much, and my guides or my higher self like collectively decided that I was going to go insane had I kept remembering and seeing everything that I was seeing. So
Mhm.
basically, they dialed me down a little bit, and now they happen, but not so intensely, not so frequently, and I can integrate them and process them. But yeah,
Mhm.
so it was already happening then. Um, so yeah, I was meditating every night and trying to connect, and nothing was happening. And just it was another normal night, and I went to bed. I was outside actually in my backyard, just meditating. It was nice out, and I was like, all right, that's enough, and I just went to bed, fell asleep.
Mhm.
Came in and went to bed and fell asleep. And then the next thing that happened was I woke up to a text message. Like my phone's on my nightstand, right? So I woke up to a text message, and it was from an unknown number, and it said, "Are you ready to meet us?" And something inside of me knew that it was them. Like, I don't know why, I
Mhm.
just had this, like, with my I was, like, buzzing, all this stuff. I'm like, "Wow," like, I'm like, "Yeah," without even questioning who it was. I just said, "Yes, of course." And they said, "Come to your back door." Like, I got a reply text that said, "Come to your back door."
Wow.
And I got up out of bed, and I slept in my basement at the time, and I have a walkout basement, so I got up from bed. My ears ringing right now. Um, and I
They're
walked
here.
Yeah, I got up and I walked out and opened the back door to look outside, come to my back door, right? So
Mhm.
I'm looking outside and it's super warm outside. It was nice. So I kind of stepped out just a little bit and I had the door open and I'm looking up, looking around, nothing, absolutely nothing. Then I'm starting to think, man, like one of my friends are pranking me or something. Like it's this not inner earth beings. You're crazy. Like, why would they text you? All this stuff's running through my head. And I sat there for a few minutes just looking and thinking and just like wondering about the text. And then I turned around to come inside. And when I did, I was scared shitless. Like I'd seen there was a figure phasing into my basement. Like it's imagine being up in the middle of the night, walking through your house and turning around and seeing somebody standing there that's not supposed to be there. It doesn't matter if they're good or bad or whoever they are. If you're not expecting them, you're startled, right?
Right.
So it startled me. And like that term frozen in fear, like I couldn't move. Like now I understand why I couldn't move. And I'll explain that in a minute. But I was like frozen in fear, not because I was scared of her, but I was just startled. I didn't know what was
Mhm.
happening. And this apparition, it looked like this tall blonde woman with this like white gown with like this blue undergarment and this gold medallion. She was phasing into this reality, but only like the upper 3/4 of her body, not the bottom half. And I'm like clearly standing here looking at this female,
Mhm.
absolutely beautiful. And like there's this whole telepathic download happening. Like there's so much going on at one time. Like there was nothing vocalized. It
Mhm.
was all telepathy, but through
Mhm.
telepathy is like visions and downloads and words and, I don't know, just emotions, everything,
Yeah. Do you
which I'm
feel like
sure
your do you feel like your consciousness was expanding? Like you were starting to that happens to me sometimes where you just feel it's hard to explain, but just an expansion whenever you're in the presence of like with the downloads. Or was it more like emotions in downloads?
I didn't know what to think. It was so much going on at once, and I was like
Yeah.
it almost felt like I was being bombarded,
Mhm.
Um, I just never experienced anything like it in my life. But the message that came through, like in this very loving, gentle voice, but it was like in my head, and she said, "Honey, you're not ready." Like in the sweetest voice, almost like if you're like patting me on the head, "Honey, you're not ready yet." Um,
Wow.
and she phased away. And when she phased away, I was like broke free from that like mild paralysis. I could move again.
Mhm.
And I immediately ran back into my room to check my phone. Like I was going to screenshot those text messages. That's what I had to do. But when I got back in there were no text on my phone. And I'm like, damn, they erased them. And I wasn't surprised about that. But what I was surprised about was that my dog was still sleeping and she
Mhm.
was like breathing very heavy, almost like she was sedated. And if I were to get up in the middle of the night and open the back door, my dogs would be right out there with me. That's just the way it goes. And the fact that she never woke up, never came to the back door, just stayed sleeping the whole time, I found curious.
Mhm.
But I think the reason I couldn't move with this, I discovered this later, was that for the inner earth beings, because they're a higher frequency, a higher density, they can't just show up here in the 3D. It's too dense for them and actually can physically hurt them. Even negative thoughts can hurt them because they feel everything.
Wow.
So, in order for them to appear in this reality, they have to shift the density of the room. And I think the density of the room had to be shifted into a higher frequency that my body couldn't handle. So it's like they met me in the middle. So I was unable to move because of the higher frequency, but it allowed her to come in
Mhm.
and give me that message. And the reason she gave me the message was because it was a whole download. I just started understanding like, oh yeah, like I'm focusing on communicating with these inner earth beings, and I'm at the very beginning of my awakening. I have all this healing to do. I have all kinds of things to still learn. I'm here, like I'm here on a mission, and I have to
Mhm.
remember what that is. And communicating with the inner earth beings just for fun wasn't part of the mission, you know? So I
Mhm.
feel like they had to show up to let me know, like, yes, it's possible. We're here, but you're not ready for this. You have a long way to go. And I understood that and I agreed with it and I respected it. And there was so much more with the download. Like I wrote it all down, but it was very pretty much along those lines, just like
Mhm.
remembering who you are and like why like it's not important to communicate with them or the extraterrestrials because when we're not even communicating with each other, like
Mhm.
we don't even have relationships with our friends and family, but we're trying to have relationships with these invisible beings and all this stuff. So
Mhm.
it was like this whole download and it all became so clear to me. But the next night, I so I don't even remember, like, the next day trying to go back to sleep that night was crazy. Um, I'm trying to remember if I even went to work the next day or not. I called off work so many times during that time in my life because I was having these crazy experiences, but,
Yeah.
um, the next night, I thought about it all day long, and I was going to bed again, and I was so used to communicate or meditating, you know.
Make contact with them or
Yeah,
try.
yeah, I was so used to doing that every night that I wanted to, like, almost naturally do it again, but I
Mhm.
remembered, like, "No, I shouldn't." But I was like, I'm gonna reach out one more time and just ask, see if she'll tell me what her name was."
Yeah.
So I laid in bed and I just did the whole thing where I sent the cord out and then, like, instantly, like, she was waiting this
Mhm.
time, and I said, "Hey, I understand the message, and I know I'm not supposed to be, trying to reach out to you anymore, but can I at least know your name?
Mhm.
Can you at least share that much with me?" And like I had headphones on, like this beautiful elvish voice said, "Si cose prefoxe." And
Um,
it like made my hair stand up. It was so beautiful. Like it was like right in my ear, but in my head, like I don't know, like telepathy. And I had an orange colored pencil and some waxy piece of cardboard on my nightstand, and I just tried to write it down, but I didn't need to write it down. I didn't know how to spell it. I didn't know anything, but I thought like I can't forget this. But little did I know I didn't need to write it down because it was tattooed. Like that name is like tattooed. I can hear it like it was yesterday every time I think of it.
wow.
Very much like the elves on Lord of the Rings, like
Mhm.
how like the wise ones talk like that.
Yeah.
They kind of put that sound effect on the voice. That's what it sounds like.
Wow. That's beautiful. So who do you think this woman was?
Back then, I was, it was back in the cosmic disclosure days when Corey was talking about the Anshar. So I was, and he talked about all kinds of other groups besides the Anshar. So I was, ultimately trying to communicate with the Anshar, which apparently you're not supposed to talk about now because of all Corey's lawsuits and all that stuff. But um, regardless, it wasn't a specific group. I was just reaching out to anyone who
Mhm.
was listening. So I
Right.
couldn't tell you like which group from which city, whatever, what
Mhm.
colony they were from, whatever. I have no idea actually, and I
Mhm.
probably should have asked. And I'm sure on some level I know. And I think maybe it was somebody from Telos. Like if I was to guess, but I could be wrong. Like I think there's a
Yeah.
lot more civilizations in the Agartha network that we're just unaware of.
Right. Well, I guess I was wondering, do you think this was a being that might be a guide of yours or like a family, like kind of like a star family of yours?
Probably. And there's been 2 times since then, like, things that have happened when I know, like, they're around. And one time I woke up not that long ago, actually. I woke up and I heard that voice again, but it
Oh,
was like I was listening in on a conversation, and I swear what it sounded like was I woke up while my higher self was still having a conversation with her, and I heard myself talking to her.
wow.
But I couldn't retain any of what was being said for some reason. It's just like a dream, how it just goes away.
Mhm.
But I knew it was her, and I said, "Socorse? Like, is that you?" And then she said, "Yes." And then that was it, and I, like, woke up. and but it was almost like I woke up too earlier than they expected me to, even
Mhm.
even though I'm talking about my higher self as if it's someone else, but that's what it was like. It was really weird,
Mhm.
and I
Yeah.
think and it kind of led me to the conclusion that our higher self is communicating with these beings a lot more than we are, you know?
Yeah. No, yeah, I actually had an experience kind of similar recently whenever, we did that camping with your dad, Jim, and that group. I woke up in the morning, slammed like, I became conscious before I was, like, back in my body, and I was on a Pleiad talking to a Pleiadians. And
Right.
then but it faded. I remember talking to them, but then I, like, basically, like, slammed back into my body and woke up, and then it faded super quick, and I was like, "I was just talking to them, but I don't remember what we were talking about."
Yeah, you know the conversation happened, but you have no idea what was said, and it's so frustrating. On some level, you know, and I think maybe it comes through and through meditation and downloads and stuff like that, but, uh, somebody I was talking to said, "I hate the term download, I'm not a computer." Like, and I'm like, "Well, I mean, whatever word you wanna use for it," but,
Yeah,
um,
yeah. Basic consciousness is basically like a computer, though. It's pretty trippy.
it
That's the best
really
way I can understand it.
right, I mean, when I was on mushrooms, when I asked to see, like, when I was shown the entire mechanics of the galaxy, the planet, our reality, the universe, they kept using the analogy of a computer software simulation program. Like, it was the best
Wow.
analogy they can give you because it's very similar, but it's organic, let's say, you know?
Mhm. Right. And that goes along with all of the programming. I'm really big on, like, reprogramming. I was studying consciousness and was really into, like, personal development and reprogramming who I am to be, like, the best version of myself before, the UFOs started coming, but that kinda I feel like that gave me kind of a basis to be able to kind of comprehend this, better. But, yeah, we're running on a program.
Mhm. I mean, everything in our life is that word surrounds us. You know,
Mhm.
the TV programming, the SSP, like we talk about the programs, everything's programming, reprogramming this, downloads, it's all we use is that lingo all the time. So whether we want to believe it's a simulation or not, on some level, I think we all understand that it is. And that's why we even speak of it in that manner.
Mhm. Kind of like
And
a dream.
right, yeah. And not I'm not saying it like it's some nefarious like AI
Mhm.
simulation. I just if you take like simulation, take that word and remove the AI component from it, that's what I'm talking about.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Um, so that's a great experience. I liked the message that she gave you. So I'm all about, like, making contact. That's kind of my thing. I help people make contact with their star
Mhm,
family and stuff, but it's for the purpose of, like, of personal development, because they can really help you with healing and all of that. But even me, there have been times where I've been trying to make contact and literally, like, nothing, and I'm like, "Well, what's going on?" Kinda like the withdrawals you were
mhm,
explaining, like, if, like, you're so used to things happening and then they stop.
mhm.
And then whenever I started meditation, I was like, "Okay, whatever, I give up." And I started doing meditations on healing myself, then it's like instantly they showed up and they're like, "See, you need to focus inward. Stop trying to
Right,
look for us. You need to focus on yourself."
right. I mean, and there's so many like, it all comes back to you. Like, that's the thing I realized disclosure has nothing to do with the information. Like, it has everything to do with discovering who you are.
Yeah.
Forget everything that's happening anywhere else. Like, ultimately, like, discovering and remembering who you are, like,
Yeah.
all that other information comes with that. And you
Mhm.
don't need to listen to YouTube videos and podcasts and all that stuff to find out because you'll start knowing, you'll start
Mhm.
getting those downloads yourself and you'll start remembering what you were specifically involved in. And it might not line up with the information that you hear online because what we hear online nowadays, like we just can't trust everything. Like it is
Mhm.
an information war. Our webinar on the um, clones and the deepfake technology and all that stuff. Like we proved that you can't trust your eyes anymore. Like you literally don't know if what you're seeing online is real, fake, photoshopped, AI. Like you just don't know.
Yeah.
And they can even there's so many ways to trick and deceive us. That's like the only way now is going inward and dropping into that heart frequency and seeing that way and learn
Mhm.
how to really tune into your intuition and and understand how your body reacts when it hears the truth versus a lie, and et cetera, et
Mhm.
cetera.
Yeah. And some people who are maybe like influencers or sharing information and stuff, like some of their stuff may be true and some of it may not be. So just really take what resonates. If you watch somebody, take what resonates and leave the rest.
Right, including what comes out of my mouth, your mouth, like everybody. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I certainly don't know what's going on. I don't have the ultimate truth by any means. And there's been times I've shared information and we've interviewed guests where, I don't always align with that information anymore. And things always shift. And I think that has to do with us shifting timelines because, like Bashar says, if anybody listens to Bashar, he talks about like there's an infinite number of Earths out there existing.
Yeah.
And like it's not that you it's not that the earth is changing, it's that your frequency, every time you raise your frequency, you're moving to a different version of earth where things are just slightly different. And so I think that when we learn information about like this 3D reality, and it might be true for this reality, but when we ascend and raise our frequency and the new information comes in that doesn't match what you thought you knew, it's because you're now existing on a different earth, if that makes any sense, where things are different. And
Yeah.
as you go higher and higher and higher, it's going to completely change. And that's why so many people are arguing right now, because everyone's at a different level of awareness and a different frequency. And things, each frequency has its own truth. So if you're up
Mhm.
here, like you're gonna see everything through completely like 5D lens, right? And everything's gonna look different. You're gonna have a higher perspective understanding than somebody who's down here at the beginning of their journey. And for them, this information might be true. And even for you, it was once true, but now you're up here. And not that anyone's above anyone, but that's just a natural process of, I guess, the evolution of consciousness. You're gonna raise your
Mhm.
frequency and things are gonna change and they're supposed to. And
Mhm.
I think what Bashar says about there being just a number of different Earths out there, versions of this planet, and there's a different truth for each version that you are
Mhm.
on.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. That's pretty mind-boggling to think about, definitely.
Right. Sorry. Yeah. This is what I think about when I'm not doing anything.
Yeah. Whenever I can't sleep at night, I'm thinking about all these different herbs and
Right.
no, yeah, definitely. But that makes sense, and hopefully people watching get something out of that, especially, like, discernment is really huge right now, and that's something that, my star family was really, really stressing about, like, a month or 2 ago, and now, like, I'm really starting to see even more, how you really can't trust things. It's like going, like, full speed, like, up notches and notches, at least what I'm noticing. I'm like, "Wow." So,
Mhm.
yeah, discernment, and then, the other thing is remembering who you are. That's number 1 priority, really.
Right. And not saying that any of the stuff isn't true. Like I think it's
Yeah.
all true. Like it just depends on where you're at and how it applies to you. So
Yeah, yeah, definitely, on your highest path.
right.
Um, so what happened in South America?
Okay, so this is a fun story. Actually, in February, I got invited to go to the Southwest and visit
Mhm,
some ancient sites there with three other people, three other people that I don't know. It was four of us total. I knew one of them, Nikki Anna Jones. You might have met her. She we're actually getting ready to interview her, but she interviewed us and she talked about going to Chaco Canyon. And the universe was just all the synchronicities were pointing towards Chaco Canyon for me. And
mhm,
she said, "Hey, I'm arranging a trip to Chaco Canyon in February. It's kind of like a tour of the Southwest. We're not just going to go there. We're going to hit all these sites. You're going to be gone for 8 days. Um, are you interested?" And usually I would say, no, I don't know these people. If you go on a trip with people you don't know, it could be a nightmare. It could be a disaster, especially if you don't get along. But
mhm,
it was the opposite.
mhm,
Like when my family asked me if I wanted to go on Gulf Shores last year, I'm like, no, I'm not going on the 3D family level, 3D surface level vacation, sit there and get fat and all the stuff. I just wasn't, it didn't appeal to me. But
yeah,
a vacation, a tour to Southwest with people I don't know, like it was exciting, but I was also being strongly guided. So I went
yeah,
down there and I met some people, amazing people, and it was actually one of the best, most life-changing trips of my life, and it was,
Mm.
the best decision I ever made, honestly, because my life has changed substantially since then. It was like taking that leap out of your comfort zone. Life begins outside of your comfort zone, as they say.
Mhm.
So I did that, and through that trip, which that trip is a whole story in itself, but, um, I ended up getting invited. I was at the right place at the right time, and a group of like 12 to 14 people were going to Belize, South America, actually Punta Gorda to be specific, to go look for Mayan runes that had been identified through satellite imagery. This
Mm.
guy, these partners owned 7,000 acres of jungle, and I just happened to be there when the invite happened, and I got invited to go help look for these Mayan runes. Like literally go into the jungle with the GPS coordinates and go try and track down these supposed runes. We didn't know what they were that were
Yeah.
identified through satellite. So that was why I ended up down there. But I really ended up down there for so many other reasons. That was just like the excuse to get me down there, even though that's cool enough. And we had
Mhm.
an entire amazing experience. That alone in itself, trekking through uncharted jungle with a guide and a machete and, hiking in that extreme heat and just like really backpacking through uncharted jungle. It's just something not many people get to experience. And it was pretty awesome.
Yeah. So were you staying the night out there in the jungle?
We had the option to, but we decided not to. So we were hiking to our location and back. So you had to take a boat to like an hour plus long boat ride to the property
Mhm.
on this little thing you could barely even call a boat. And then you hike maybe 4 hours to your destination and then 4 hours back, then an hour. It was long days. Like it was a commitment, but it was something, yeah, I wouldn't trade for the world. It was an experience, and the things I learned, the people I met, the ways of life that I got to see. Um, but what ultimately happened was I had this major heart opening down there through a cat
Mhm.
that was staying on a resort who was just
Mhm.
like by me the whole time, and it was always sitting on my lap, and it was every time I would open the room, my room, it would try to run into my room. It would run into my room, and I couldn't get it out, and it was just this weird connection I had with this cat. And
Mhm.
one night I was sitting outside my room. It was, the weather is like beautiful 100% of the time there. So I was just sitting outside and it jumped up on my lap and it put its head into my chest and started purring like intensely.
Mhm.
And I was like almost brought to tears. And I felt like she was like unlocking my heart. It was the weirdest thing I've ever experienced. Like it felt like the
Mhm.
walls were being torn down and I could feel like in a way I haven't
Mhm.
been able to feel in years. And I actually became emotional, like, at that moment, but for the rest of the trip, I was actually my heart was almost it was aching, but it's because I was like love became so unconditional love became so apparent to me after that moment.
Mhm.
Everything was beautiful, and I just loved everyone, and it was just it was a frequency that I couldn't handle for that long, but for that trip, like, I was able to through that cat and a number of other reasons, I was able to drop down
Wow.
into that frequency. So I think that was setting the stage for what I was about to experience because I wouldn't have been able to experience like the Mayan underworld and the stuff that I saw had that not happened.
Wow. Yeah, the heart they always tell me, like, the heart is the key, the heart is the highway to being able to experience some of
Yeah,
these higher
e
things.
exactly. That's exactly how it's been described. Like all these
Mhm.
frequencies and all these places that we think are so far away are actually right next to us and just in a different frequency. And if we could learn how to drop into our heart, we can be in Atlantis. We can be in Lemuria. There's versions of Atlantis and Lemuria that didn't fall. And like they're still there right
Mhm.
next to us. And people don't understand that. Um, in inner earth or wherever it is.
Mhm.
So before all that, let me rewind. Like when we got to Belize, we had to rent a car and drive down to Punta Gorda, which is a 3 hour drive. And somehow or another, there was two vehicles. Like somehow we managed to turn a 3 hour drive into a 5.5 hour drive. But we all collectively decided we had missing time. Like it
Mhm.
just didn't make any sense. Like it was almost impossible. At one point on the drive, we all were like, "Wait, what time is it? Why are we still driving? Like we should be there by now." We still had 2.5 hours to go. Like
Wow.
it was crazy. Like we just felt like we were driving forever, and it was supposed to be a 3 hour drive. And we got there way later than we thought. And
So what do you think happened?
Well, the girl we were with is a powerful channeler, Katie. You might have met her at our
Yeah.
conference last year. So she was in our car, and at one
Mm,
point she was like, "Guys, we have to stop the car." She was getting like overwhelmed with like all these messages and the land and all like this remembrance and stuff. So we stopped the car briefly because of that, like 5 minutes, not even 5 minutes. Like it was super brief. She just had to get out of the car and ground herself for a minute. It was like
mhm.
overwhelming. And then she got back in and we took off. But it wasn't more than a 5 minute stop. But we think maybe when we stopped there, something happened that we don't
Oh.
remember. Because we
Oh.
because we all got out, like, I don't know, like, we think something happened that we don't remember there,
Mhm.
and I think that, it might have been 2.5 2 hours, 2.5 hours of missing time for us, but I think it was more like a week or 2 of missing time, and we all have weird stories to tell after the trip. Every night after that trip, after I got home, we were there for 15 days. When I got back, I was having these intense, realistic, lucid dreams. Like we were, all of us that were on the trip were still in the jungle. Like we would be in the jungle, but we would be like visiting all these amazing sites, like underground and all this stuff. And like
Oh.
discovering these tablets and reading this language. And one of the girls with us like knew how to read this ancient language. And it was like, we were this like perfect team that was sent on this mission, but, like, it was happening every night. Like, I kept telling the people I was with, I was like, "We're still in the jungle, like, there's another version of us who are still there." And we ultimately think we came to the conclusion that it wasn't happening simultaneously, or maybe it was, but that what I was remembering every night for, like, a week or 2 after that, like, it was different. Every night was a different mission, but it was always in the jungle. And I realized that what was happening was that was what happened during our missing time.
Mm.
And I was just, like, getting the memories back from the missing time from that trip, but, um,
Wow.
so we ended up, meeting some locals who told us about this site. It's kinda not really well known. There is like, you can look it up on Google, but nobody knows it's a site you can visit. It says it's closed, and it's one of the biggest pyramid complexes in the middle of the jungle I've ever seen. Like, it's massive,
Mhm.
absolutely massive, and it's all unexcavated. Barely any excavation has been done. You would drive past it and never even know you're driving past it type of thing.
Wow.
And we met this guy and he took us to the site. And this was after I had the cat like open me up. And as soon
Mhm.
as we got to the site, like I was running around like a kid in a candy store. I'm like, wow. I'm like, do you guys feel that? The energy was alive. Like I've never been anywhere in my life where it felt that potent.
Yeah.
And I'm running around the site. I'm like a kid. I'm so excited. I'm like running to the top. I'm like, what's going on? This is amazing. This place, it felt like you were in heaven on earth or something, like how it should feel all the time. And the frequency was just alive is the only way I can describe it. And unfortunately, we didn't get there until like sunset, right? So we had to leave almost immediately.
Mm.
I was like so disappointed. I wanted to stay so bad. We left and we ended up going and jumping like off some waterfall and whatever. It was fun. But um we ended up coming back a couple days later. We ended up going back to that site. And there was like it's a huge pyramid complex, but there's three main sites like throughout the jungle. And you have to hike through the jungle to each one. And when we got to the second site, or maybe it was the first one, man, it was one of one of them. Katie took off. My friend, who's a Chandler, like she always takes off because she's guided, and she climbs. She's like up on top this pyramid. Next thing you know, she's up on top the pyramid, and that's what's cool about the uncharted sites because you can climb on the structures.
Oh, wow.
Not like Chichen Itza or something where you have to stay back from everything. She was all the way up on top of this thing, and my friend Nikki went up there as well, and um, then I was looking for them, and I finally realized they were up there. So I went up there, and they were like, "Oh my god, it's like the energies up here is amazing." And Katie was like, "You have to stand." There's a looter pit in the top of the pyramid. Somebody had already tried digging something, but she's like, "You should stand in there. It's extremely powerful, like overwhelmingly powerful." And she's like, "You just have to feel the energy in there." I'm like, "I'm already buzzing. I don't know if I can handle anymore." I'm like, "Okay." So I stepped inside there, and as soon as I stepped inside there, I don't know what started happening. I started my body started having a seizure, and my neck. I remember like this was tightening up, and my eyes were like rolling back. I couldn't, and
Oh my god.
I was like falling to my knees, and I could hear. I was like half conscious, half not, and I could hear Katie all of a sudden just channeling this ancient language and like chanting like whatever it was. I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, what is going on? And it felt like I got struck by lightning, and it turns out
Mhm.
I basically did, but energetically. And this energy like brought me to my knees, and I got this flash, and I saw a vision that my consciousness was like shot down underground, straight below that pyramid, which they showed me like a shaft that goes all the way down below the top of that pyramid, and it opens up into this huge underground cavern where there was like these Mayan like they were like inner earth people, but they weren't necessarily Mayan, but they resembled Mayans. And I
Mhm.
remember specifically seeing like a male warrior, like the
Mhm.
warrior cast. And I'm like, it all happened so fast, but I'm like, wow, like this all goes underground. These pyramid sites are just the surface of a much bigger, vast, colony underground. But they showed me like my consciousness was sent down and it was like underwater, underground river and all kinds of stuff. And I came back, this was all in the instant, and I came back and I'm like on my knee and I look back and they're like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" I'm like, "What?" I said, "What the fuck?" I couldn't say it. I was like, "What the fuck?" And they're like, "Are you okay? You're as white as a ghost. You're pale. Like, what happened?" I'm like, this goes underground. I just kept saying, "This goes underground. This goes underground." And they're like, "What happened?" And I tried to explain it to them, but I like had to gather myself and climb
Yeah.
back out of there. And the way it was described was these people, what we call the ancient ones, they technically they would be like considered inner earth, but more or less they're here just in another frequency. Like we wouldn't go down, dig down and find them. We have to
Mhm.
be in the right frequency and then they would already be here, type of thing. So
Mhm.
what happened was is I apparently like I was one of them. I am one of them. And I was led to this site specifically by not by accident. And the site needed to be that they were called the energy threads needed to be reconnected, and they needed me for whatever reason. They can't do it from their frequency. They need help from us. So they need the physical vessel also to work through. And what they did was they used me to reconnect that site energetically and like turn it back on. And
Mhm.
they described it like a lightning strike. And the reason it had to happen so fast is because other people were starting to walk up, other part of our group was starting to walk up that pyramid. And they had to do it before they got up there because it was all this frequency thing, right?
Mhm.
So it just happened. They're like, no, can't waste any time. Like, we've been waiting lifetimes for this guy to get down to Punta Gorda to climb on this pyramid so we can do this type of thing. And like to them, it was like, we're doing this. Sorry, your body can handle it.
Oh, that's
And
crazy.
and so what happened, what was described was all these sites that are in ruins all over the world that look like they were destroyed in some sort of battle, which some of them were actually, but there was an ancient, galactic battle, you could say, with energy weapons and lasers and all like what we think was like nuclear was actually a little more advanced than that. But um, a lot of the sites that just looked like they were just kind of taken apart, it
Mhm.
didn't make any sense. Like they weren't destroyed, but it looked like they were dismantled, and that's exactly what they said. So these sites were these ancient this ancient group of people, this ancient civilization understood that there was a dark threat. You can say dark threat, like whoever these dark players were, these dark beings
Mhm.
were coming into this reality, coming were from space, whatever it looked like, I don't know, but they knew this dark group was coming to take over, and they didn't. There's nothing they could do about it. Um,
Do you know around have any idea around, like, what time period?
they
Or what do you
absolutely will. I've tried so many times to ask them the time period, and the only thing I can get is this is like predates Lumeria. This is like something that happened way, way before like any
wow.
of us really comprehend. Like, Lemuria, Atlantis, Egypt, Christ, all that stuff. That's like here on a timeline this long of different races of man and ETs and stuff that were here before Lemurians. You know what I'm saying? So this was like so long ago, and that's why some of these pyramids and these sites they just don't fit in with our timeline because the timeline's bullshit.
Mhm.
But they said that they they knew this threat was coming, and the only thing they could do, they couldn't fight it, but what they had to do was they dismantled their own pyramids, their own structures, so they couldn't be hijacked because the pyramids aren't just pyramids. Everything was a technology, all of it. It was a
Mhm.
global technological grid that was creating some sort of free energy, acting as a like an astral galactic communication device, a teleporter. You know, portals were being opened. Like it was like this amazing thing, right? Well, this there was nothing they could do to stop this threat, so they had to dismantle their own technology at
Mhm.
before they left, and that's what happened. So whenever we were back there, some of the sites the dark thought like we can't they thought they were useless, like they thought it was too late, it had been destroyed, they couldn't turn it back on, but it could be turned back on, but just not by the dark because they don't operate in the heart. If you're in a heart frequency, you can
Mhm.
reconnect it, but they don't
Mhm.
operate in that frequency. So in their mind, even through the most advanced technology, the site was worthless to them because they can't exist in the frequency to activate it again. So
Mhm.
that and then apparently right now that's what's happening all over the world. Like certain people are being guided to these sites and reconnecting these threads and like it's being turned back on. And it was really profound. I mean, it was incredible. And there's so much
Wow.
more that I just can't that I didn't retain that, came through all that. But
Wow. Yeah, I wonder if that, yeah, I don't know, like, I've seen visions of, like, flying saucers and wars whenever the dinosaurs were on Earth. I wonder if, because, the like, the darkness a dark came in through Atlantis too, so I wonder if this just a repeating cycle?
I think it's the same group. Like it was the same. I think ultimately it was maybe, we look at time linearly, but I think ultimately it was the same group.
Okay.
Like that I don't know what it looked like. I mean, to try and understand it through our 3D mind is almost impossible.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, for sure.
but and I think like the way it's been like showing up for me is that like these civilizations necessarily weren't destroyed on the 3D level. They were destroyed, but they really just essentially shifted frequencies. Therefore, they shifted dimensions. So if we knew how to find a frequency, like dial into that station, we could see that realm, like the crystal
Mhm.
cities and like these other cities that we always hear about existing in other dimensions. They're all there. It's not
Mhm.
like they just completely disappear. But in the 3D, it might look like ruins, but a lot of the times the 3D structures, like a 3D pyramid or whatever, they look insignificant here. It's because they're actually the foundation for a larger structure that's existing in another frequency that we can't see. And
Mhm.
they, for some reason, they described it as the having the foundation in the third dimension makes that structure like solidifies it. It's like the most sound foundation for their buildings, but not only is it a solid foundation, but it also acts as a portal by having parts of that structure in different dimensions. It automatically acts as a portal so they can, traverse through dimensions basically. So
Wow.
you can be on like let's say on one of these pyramid sites and you just see the pyramid, but if you understood the frequency that's above it, you would actually see something much larger, and then above that you might see like a floating crystal city or something and whatever it might look like. But and it's all connected. But at the very bottom, its foundation is actually in the third dimension.
Wow. That just reminded me. I have a friend who took a trip to Mount Shasta over summer, and they saw like a hit, like looked like a city over Mount Shasta.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Like,
Wow.
and we get glimpses of it, especially now because I think there's two timelines or two frequencies or two dimensions, however you want to look at it. I think we're like bumping shoulders with them. And I think what happens sometimes people will see like, oh, there's two suns or the moon looks like this and whatever, blah, blah. I think what's happening is the other reality is like blipping in a little bit. And we're like
Mhm.
bumping shoulders. Like if you're racing and your cars are bumping, I think we're bumping. And when we bump, we see into the other reality. And that's why so many people are like, oh, nothing is what we've been told. Everything's a lie, blah, blah. Well, yeah, essentially it is. But we found like in the third dimension, like I said earlier, like we kind of have a good understanding of the way things operate. But when a higher frequency is coming in, it completely changes the game and nothing makes sense anymore. And I don't think,
Mhm.
in my personal opinion, I think that's what's happening. So it's not like
Mhm.
they've been lying to us about everything. It's just a new reality is actually starting to show itself, and there's no explanation for it. And everybody wants to blame everything on everyone else. We're so used to blaming the cabal or the deep state or the dark player, whatever. We're so used to blaming them for like all these cover-ups, but I don't think necessarily it was all intentionally covered up. I just think a new reality is starting to emerge.
Right. Yeah, I just got the visual of like a 2D like stick person on a piece of paper trying to see like a physical ball. Like you only see like a tiny, tiny piece of it,
Right.
the whole
Yeah,
thing.
exactly.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, do you have any other I wanted to talk a little bit about SSP, but we've kind of been going for a bit. Do you have any other experiences that you would like to share that come to mind?
Yeah, I'll continue with the, Belize because that
Okay,
wasn't just
perfect.
it.
Okay,
Um,
perfect.
so actually it was, after that, we ended up I forget what day it was, the whole 15 days, blurred together on top of missing time and all. It was like a whole blur, but,
Yeah.
uh, we ended up going to this cave, like one of the off days when we weren't exploring the jungle, we went to this cave, but you had to swim into the cave. Like you had it wasn't like a cave you hiked into, right? You literally had to get like a helmet on, a life jacket, and you swim into this cave and you get so far in, it's completely pitch black. The cave tours down there aren't like here. There's no walkways, there's no rails, there's no lights. It's pitch black. And if your lights go out, like good luck. And you're swimming, we all have our headlamps on. We're swimming into these waters, and immediately my friend, the Chandler, she's just getting like all this information. It's super active, and we're swimming further and further into the heart of the cave. And it was explained at the heart of this cave where it ends, there's a waterfall. Like there's this water dumping into the cave from inside the mountain. They don't know
Mhm,
where the water source comes from, but it's always dumping into, and it's like it's the beginning of the river, right?
mhm.
And
Oh,
then it flows out of the cave and it starts the river. Well, once we got to the heart of that cave, we swam. You're like the water was a little more shallow because we were there in like the off season, the dry season, so it wasn't the rainy season. So you'd swim, you kind of have to climb over some stuff and swim and climb over, and eventually you get to the heart where this waterfall is just dumping into this cave from the mountain, like just from the side of the mountain cave
mhm,
wall, right? And when I got in there, I felt the same energy that I felt at the pyramid site. It was just off the charts intense. And I got into the water down there, and it was like electricity. Like, and all of us collectively, like, wow, we could feel the power. Like it was a power station. It was like a generator.
mhm.
And I was in the water again, and I had another seizure like I had on top of the pyramid, but nobody was around me this time. Like I was kind of off to the side and it was happening, clinging onto the wall. Like I wasn't even going to be, luckily I had a life jacket on. Right.
Yeah.
And I was able, like, I had to get out of the water because being in the water was like being plugged in to like high voltage electricity. That's how powerful it was. And I had to get out of the water, and like even touching the cave wall, the whole place was electric. There was some sort of unseen energy there, but you could certainly feel it.
Wow.
And my friend Nikki, she went up under the waterfall, which is extremely powerful. Like it would knock you over if you're standing underneath it, but she swam under it and stood up behind it and put her hands on the wall. And she got this whole download, this whole vision. It was amazing. Like it was incredible, apparently. And she came and
Mhm.
she told me, she's like, you got to go under there and put your hands on the wall. I'm like, tell me what you see. Like she said, it's unbelievable. And she's like, I don't even want to tell you what happened. So I'm like, I don't know if I can handle it. Like, she didn't understand what my body was going through. She's like, you have
Yeah.
to. I'm telling you, you have to. I'm like, fine. We're here. Might as well do it. So I go up underneath this waterfall, and I climb up on a rock, and I put my hands like it almost was like there was this place for your hands to go, which is really weird. Um, like it was just like anyone who would walk up there would just put their hands there just because it was
Mhm.
like made for it. It was really weird. But when I did it, I was immediately my consciousness was shown like shot down, and I saw a massive like jungle, like a magical forest, but inside the planet with
Mhm.
like these colors I can't really explain, kind of like your little silhouette down there, but a little greener. Like, and I don't know, it was like these greenish blue trees that were like miles high and like extremely big. And it was just like there's not even words to describe half of what I saw, but it was like this massive ancient forest that was literally magical. And it
Wow.
was it all happened so quick, and then, like, it's almost like getting electrocuted, so I had took my hands off, and I came back, but oh, yeah, so when I put my hands on it, I, like, kept hearing over and over, like a broken record, Shambhala, 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 like, I kept hearing Shambhala, and I was like, "Am I seeing Shambhala right now?" Like, the
Mhm.
city, like, the original Garden of Eden, all that stuff, right? And I when I came back out of that, I finally reconnected with my friend, and I was like, "Did you see Shambhala?" And she's like, "I don't know, but I saw." She's like, "I saw these big green blue trees in this forest." I'm like, "Me too." And she's like, "No." We started comparing notes, and like everything she saw, I saw. We
Wow.
both saw the same reality, basically, and it
Mhm.
was this beautiful underworld, like what we would call like maybe the Mayan underworld or something, right?
Mhm.
So we're comparing notes the whole time. We finally start swimming back out of the cave, and she's once we get out, we're walking back. It's a long walk even back to where we parked. So she's talking to the tour guide, and he just happened to mention. He goes, "Yeah, the Mayans call that cave Shambhala."
Oh, wow.
And she's like, "Shambhala? You mean Shambhala?" He goes, "No, Shambhala." And she's like, "Tyler, come here." She yelled, and she
Mhm.
explained to him what happened, what we saw, and
Mhm.
and she's like, "He says that he was here in Shambhala and he was seeing Shambhala." And I told him my story, and he looked at us. He goes, "This cannot be a coincidence." Like he believed us, and he said, so it turns out that the Mayans actually believe that that water comes from the Mayan underworld. It comes from inner Earth, and that water source is actually coming from inner Earth, and
Wow.
that river flows through the village, and the water is the most crystal clear water you can ever imagine.
Mhm.
Like, it's transparent, like there is no, like, it's not cloudy or anything. But
Mhm.
what we discovered after we on the way back out, we decided to swim in it because it was sunny, and like some of the local villagers, everyone just like living in the water. And I understand why. This water feels amazing. It's like healing in itself to be in the water. But
Mhm.
what we discovered is when you put your hand like right on the surface of the water and let the sun hit it, it literally looks like it's glowing electric blue. Like it's like this weird phenomena that happens with the water. And we were all trying it. And it looks like the water, it looks like your hands are glowing like with blue electricity.
Wow.
So there's something like special about this water. And there's a reason that the villagers just hang out in this water all day. And I think it's because it's like healing waters from within the
Mhm.
planet. So those are the two experiences I had down there with like inner earth, I guess you could say. Didn't
That's
really have any contact with any beings, but getting the visuals of the places is almost more exciting, you know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. And I'm curious, what were the villagers like who were, like, in that area?
Um, they're Mayan villages down in Punta Gorda, but everybody speaks English because it's really weird. Like, well, there's the Mayans that speak Mayan, but everybody
Mhm.
in like the Belizeans or whatever you call them, they speak English. That's their main language. It's really weird
Oh, wow.
because they're under like the Queen rule down there, and like it's all politics and everything. Pretty sure the town we stayed in was ran by the cartel. I would bet money on it, but there's no way to prove it. But,
Mhm.
the villagers, the Mayans, like, they're very much of a old style of life.
Mhm.
Like, after one of the cave tours we did, a different cave, which was even just as impressive, but it wasn't underwater. Like, we're only the 3rd group that's ever been brought into this cave, apparently. Like, no, like, tourists don't actually get to go, but when you talk to people and meet the right people, um, we got to go. We were invited to go eat at one of their homes in
Mm.
their village, and it's just like a hut, like no electricity. Like it's like a brick oven on the floor. Like it's very rudimentary. Very
Wow.
there's no technology, um, but the food was incredible. Like everything you eat, you feel like it's just healing you. That's the way to describe the food that they
Mhm.
make. You know, it's all local. It's all fresh. It's electric. I don't know. And, so they don't have electricity. Some of them have, solar panels but then we asked about that, and they said the solar panels are strictly for their students, for their kids who are wanting to go to college and, like, move out so they can study.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
they're not just, like, watching TV and shit like that, but they were, using them for, like, study and research and schooling, educational purposes, so
Wow.
but they're very much connected to the land, very like heart centered, like, it's
Mhm.
just a way of life that is literally forgotten here in the States.
Yeah, definitely.
It's like
I'm
camping all the time, you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
So how did it feel without, like, technology and all the 5G towers and everything? Could you feel a difference just walking around too?
Yeah, we all could. All of us collectively were like, "Man, what's different?" And we realized, there wasn't a 5G tower in sight. There's no
Mhm.
planes, there's no chemtrails, there's no sound pollution, there's no light pollution. So there's just not a chaotic frequency like there is 100% of the time here in the States. No matter where you go, you still feel it.
Mhm.
We were so disconnected from all of that that it felt like I've never slept better in my life. Like you
Mhm.
didn't, no problem falling asleep. It was just so peaceful. And I remember asking myself, man, why don't I live here? Like, what am I doing? Like, I should be living somewhere like this. I
Mhm.
don't even care that they're basically living in poverty. Even the people that are in town, like it's a very much of like that third world country feeling,
Mhm.
but there's like a charm to it and an
Mhm.
authenticity to that way of life that I could care less if I had to live like a bum. If I could just live with that peace, I'd be happy.
Mhm. Right. Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, if there's no 5G towers anywhere, but all of us had cell service and they were still like the resort had like a Wi-Fi router and like we could still get internet. Like, but there's no towers. So that tells me the towers, are bullshit. I which I figured out anyway. Like I think that the service comes from the satellites
Mhm.
for the most part, and the towers are more of like a frequency that maintains the illusion and it's all weaponized, which I talked about in the last episode we did when I was getting into the voice of God stuff.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, I'm not saying every tower is like that. I'm sure some of them are, connecting with the cell phones, but still, it
Yeah.
was just an amazing way of life.
Mhm. Yeah, that's awesome. So how did you feel afterwards?
I
After that trip?
I felt incredible, like, I lost weight, like, I don't know, like, I ate so much, I felt like, but we were doing so much, but the food we were eating was real, like I said, I can't
Mhm.
describe it, everything was amazing because it was, like, nothing was being shipped in, nothing was processed, it was all grown on the land, either killed on the land, whatever, like, it was right there
Mhm.
local and as real and raw as it gets, so the food was incredible, and even though we were eating a lot, we didn't gain any weight because our body was actually doing what it's supposed to do with food and use it as fuel. It didn't have all the preservatives and chemicals to deal with. Once all those
Mhm.
preservatives enter our system, your body doesn't know what to do with it. So it starts storing it as fat and resides in the organs and we get these diseases and it
Mhm.
clots our blood and all this stuff. But
Yep.
when you're eating naturally like that, you actually like it fuels you. You're like, wow, I can
Mhm.
actually eat this big meal and have energy. That's unbelievable to me.
Yeah.
You
And
know?
it's medicine. It's
Yeah,
medicine.
exactly.
Yeah. Well, did you have any other experiences that you thought of that you'd like to share?
Well, I mean, I could go on and on about that trip. It depends. You're gonna have to be a little more specific because there's a lot. Like, is there anything like about that trip or something else you want to shift gears? I don't know how much time we have left.
Yeah, well, we've been at it for an hour, so how about we just maybe we'll talk about the Sasquatch people and then we'll cut it short, and then we'll do, maybe you can come on another time to talk more about your SSP experiences because I know that's a whole other
Yeah,
episode.
that's another episode in itself. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so you were talking about in your presentation the, Sasquatch beings in Colorado, but they weren't Sasquatch?
Yeah, they're more like well, you can call them forest people, whatever label we want to give them. They're
Yeah.
just in a race in another a race or a race of beings in another frequency in another
Mhm.
dimension. So I was with my friend in Colorado also who channels same girl, and it's amazing being with somebody like that who can communicate because like it becomes very apparent like there's another world residing right outside of our visual spectrum right all the time where it's just right there but we don't see it. But when you're with somebody who does see it and they can communicate with it, you
Mhm.
almost start seeing it too. It's weird, like because you're aware of it now. So
Yeah.
um, we one of the days we went up into there's this place called Devil's Thumb in Fraser, Colorado. It's like this really kind of shady resort where a lot of like politicians and celebrities will go, and like I don't know about like and why it's even called Devil's Thumb, and it's like a logging industry up in the like they're tearing down all the trees. It's not really a good vibe, but we were guided to go hike up through these mountains there, which are still beautiful. Like it's
Mhm.
beautiful. Like we were in the trees, and um, I was just following her lead, and she was being led to like we started climbing this mountain. Like it was like really we had to climb that, but when you're following her, like when they're talking to her and the frequencies are pulling her, like you're just going. So it's like really hard climbing, and we finally get up to the spot, and she's like, "Okay, we can stop here." And I'm like, What are we looking for? What are we waiting for?" And then she starts, for the first time ever, she starts channeling what we originally thought was a Sasquatch. We didn't know, just because you're in the woods and here comes this being,
Mhm.
and she could perceive their energy at first. They were very, very tall, um, and it was like, it started. Like, I don't even know really what was happening with her and this being telepathically. Like there was an exchange going on,
Mhm.
and she was like she wasn't expecting a new being to come through as a channeler, and you don't always trust when a new being comes through, so she was very hesitant, but I was like kind of there like no, it's okay, let's like talk to he's here for a reason. So I started asking questions,
Mhm.
and it made things a lot easier for her, and I was like, are you a Sasquatch? I'm like, no, but we might be, like, the Sasquatch might be the closest description that the humans have for us, even though we're far from it. Like,
Okay.
we're like, they've been, like, monitoring the forest of the planet and, like, guarding the guardians of the forest all over the world, basically, for
Wow.
generations, since the beginning of time, right? So, but they're not necessarily like Sasquatch or Bigfoot, and they were very, like, not adamant, but they're like, "We need to come up with new names for them because that's does not describe who they are," you know? And
Aw.
so I was like forest people this way, and even that isn't like doesn't still doesn't do it. But
Mhm.
they were this being was very like kind of distressed and burnt out and like demoralized in a way.
Mhm.
And I was just asking about like if I can like what I have to do to start communicating with them. And like, well, we've been communicating with your people for years, and no one takes it like the messages seriously. Like they don't take it seriously. So they get more excited about the contact and they want to go tell the story, but they don't want to put in the work and like do what we're trying to help them do so we can like win this war. They very much understand that we're in the midst of war right now, a spiritual war.
Wow.
And they just like they almost gave up on communicating with people because it was just having no effect. People weren't they would get the message, but no one was applying it, and like nothing was happening. It didn't matter who they talked to, like it was still like an exciting story that somebody would go tell, and like it didn't really go anywhere after that. Yeah, books would be written and stuff, but ultimately it wasn't having the effect that they wanted it to have. And they just felt like every time they would like start over with somebody new, it was just a waste of time. So but what they said was something shifted and the positive timeline has been basically solidified. And this
Mhm.
time it's going to work. Like this time it works. They said, this time it works. I forgot exactly what they said. This time, they didn't say this time we win, but this time is different. They said this time is different. And they kind of described it as like a horse race, and like all these horses are different timelines, and we never knew which timeline was going to take the lead. You never knew which horse was going to take the lead. Well, now there's a lead horse, the quote positive timeline, and it's basically guaranteed to win. So they understand that now, and it's actually worth their while to start communicating with us again and giving those messages because they really think this time is different. Like it's not just going to like repeat the same cycle like it had been for generations. And which kind of aligns with a lot of the information we're getting from everywhere right now. Like this time is
Mhm.
different. Like there's this window, like the ascension window or whatever you want to call it,
Mhm.
where things are different. But so that's why it was compelled to share that information and kind of tell us that.
Wow.
And and then she had these crystals in her hand. We were finding these random crystals like in weird places on the path, like quartz, because they're quartz mountains everywhere.
Mhm.
And those were actually like almost like breadcrumbs that it was leaving to lead us to that spot. And she never picks up crystals, but she was guided to pick these up. And I jokingly was saying like, "Oh, that's Sasquatch leaving those for you," you know. And she didn't believe me until so then like energetically, like I couldn't see it, but she could see this being. It was more of a she didn't see like features, but she could see the height of it and the energy of it.
Mhm.
And in whatever dimension it was in, it came and took the rocks, the crystals out of her hand. And she started like crying. And it was like this beautiful experience for her. And it
Mhm.
like verified it was real. But the physical rocks stayed in her hand. But like the version of the rocks that was in the frequency that this being was in is what they took, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
And
it does.
yeah. So anyway, like it was confirmation for her that she like wasn't crazy at the time. And the whole thing was it was wild, you know. And then
Mhm.
a couple nights later, we were like sky watching, and we just went to this random place and we were sky watching, and we both felt this presence over in the right side of the woods over here. And we weren't even looking at the sky anymore. We knew something was there, but we couldn't see it. And then, you know, of course, they start talking with her, and it was three of these beings. I don't, they weren't even from the same race that the other one was, but it was like three more forest people that weren't Sasquatch, but they were like, you know what I mean? Like this, and
Mhm.
it was funny because um, when they were started talking to her, they were like, "Why are you sitting?" They kept asking her, "Why are you sitting? Why are you sitting?" And she didn't know. She goes, "What do you mean? Like, why am I sitting?" But she had remembered the whole area. She's had dreams of this area for years, and she that's why she was drawn to even go back.
Wow.
What she realized is that she's known these beings and she's communicated with them, but when she's in her astral body, she's flying. So they found it really strange that she was here sitting down. They'd never seen her sitting before. And they were like,
Oh,
they were asking her why she was sitting. And then she realized, oh my God, like I'm always here in my astral body. They've never seen my physical 3D body sitting down. And so it was this really weird exchange. And then I was like, can I ask him a question? And they were like, "Sure." I was like, "Is there anything you could do to make yourself visible? I would love to see you." Like I was genuinely asking. And she started laughing. And I thought she was laughing because she thought it was a dumb question, but she was laughing because they were laughing. And I'm like, "What's so funny?" I kind of felt stupid for a second. And I'm like, "No, I'm like, I'm serious. Like, I really would love to see them." And they were like, they finally said, "We're not hiding. We're not hiding. It's not up to us. Like you, it's up to you to find like to drop into your heart and see us. We're here. Like we are right here all the time. And you can see us if you can find it." But then I started trying too hard. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna drop into my heart. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna see him.
yeah.
But obviously nothing happened. I was like, well, could you like give us a sign or like manipulate something in the 3D so I can like so just so I can see that you're there or where you're
Mhm.
exactly at. And they're like, "What?" And so, "Can you shake a tree?" And they're like, "Why would we do that?" And I'm like, "What do you mean? Like, why would we shake our friend? Like, imagine if one of your friends shook you, like they're and then they're explaining like the trees are alive and living, and that would actually really hurt the tree if I were to take it and shake it." And I'm
Mhm.
just like, wow, we just don't have any idea what we're doing to nature when we're cutting down trees, when we're stomping through the grass, weed whacking, whatever. You know what I'm saying? We have no idea what's actually
Mhm.
going on. And like they don't even want to shake the tree because like it would hurt. Like, would you shake your friend? Like, how good would that
Mhm.
feel, basically?
Wow.
And I never did get to end up seeing them, but like there was another lesson. Like I just there's things we don't think about until
Yeah.
you're in in that moment, like,
Mhm.
and you have the opportunity to communicate with somebody from another realm, and you get to ask them questions and like get these answers. It's unbelievable,
Mhm.
and ultimately it all comes back to us though. Like we can spend all day long going out and connecting and communicating with them, and like they'll help us, they're here to assist us, but it's up to us. We're on this journey in the 3D in the third dimension. You know,
Mhm.
we incarnated here for a reason to do the work here and to have the human experience, and all the other stuff we've already experienced before. We were that before we came here. So to
Mhm.
strive to get back there doesn't make any sense because we understand we're infinite, right? And we're gonna be back there inevitably, or we already are back there actually. So while we're here, embrace it, and you know, and we have to help each other. And I just think
Yeah.
it's a beautiful
Mhm.
it's a beautiful realization to understand that, you know.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's a beautiful experience, and I like how the being before that was talking about the timeline shifts. That's good news, but I don't know, I feel like especially the past, like, few months or, like, 4 months, 5 months, really the past year, but just there's so much going on around us that we can't see, and the timeline's coming up a lot, so that's good to hear what the forest person said.
I mean, we've been interviewing people, Kristen Bredemis and then Sarah Breskman Cosme. Both of them were talking about like the timelines right now, and they're seeing like these three major timelines, and like one like dropping in like this like the main timeline now. Like
Mhm.
it's just I don't know. There's just something that's becoming solidified, like a timeline, I guess. Like we're finally gonna be on the right path, even though I do agree that on the surface it might still get darker and look like chaotic for a while. And that's what people have to realize. Like I see people losing hope, like watching the news and looking around, and like it is demoralizing when you see people just like in zombie mode on autopilot, going through the motions, not even self-aware of, the lack of self-awareness
Mhm.
is astonishing,
Yeah.
and but we have to understand that like we are as star seeds, as whatever we are, like it's actually a beautiful gift to be able to see all that and recognize it and observe it and know that we don't have to take part in it.
Mhm.
And it gives us a beautiful opportunity to operate from a higher perspective and navigate th- that way and see things through a different lens than most of reality isn't looking through, So I
Mhm.
think like as bad as it's going to look on the surface and all this war and all, it's all hyper sensationalized chaotic events to suck our energy, to siphon our energy, to loosh farm. They
Mhm.
want that. All this chaos is basically intelligently designed, it's all by,
Yeah.
none of it's by accident. They want
Yeah.
that chaotic frequency, but once you see it, once you're aware of it, you can rise above it and you don't have to partake in it. Yeah, like we're all 3D. We all have to, we're still all technically in survival mode in a way. We all have to share the same, like we have to pay bills and whatever the case is, we have the
Taxes.
same needs. Yeah. But ultimately you don't have to live in those lower frequencies that they're trying to project on our
Mhm.
consciousness.
Yeah. Right.
And that's what the matrix is. The matrix is the illusion that you focus on. Like
Mhm.
basically where your focus goes is
Yeah.
that's the, you can create a number of different matrices just
Mhm.
depending on what you're focused on.
Yeah, I was reminded of that the other day in the, live activation that I did, Sunday. It was a lot about your perception, what you're perceiving because you're creating what you're choosing to focus on,
Right.
and, yeah, you're
Exactly.
mhm. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing these experiences. I'm just all about mystical, like interesting experiences like that. So it's nice to hear some of your positive experiences. But you've got a conference coming up. Do you want to share about that?
Yeah, I almost forgot. Yeah, so it's our third conference in Grafton, Illinois again in May 13th through the 16th at the Pure Marquette Lodge. It's a beautiful resort. You've been there both times, I believe, and
Hmm.
it's not like a super massive event. There's about 200 people roughly, and it's super intimate, but it's a beautiful energy, and we're excited. And we have a good lineup this year, and people are already, the energy is buzzing surrounding it already. The venue's already booked up. The conference isn't sold out, but there's only limited rooms on site, and those went even like that was already half booked up before the tickets even went on sale, which is amazing. Like
Yeah.
people are excited about it. So
Hmm.
I'm really looking forward to it, and it's
Hmm.
called Rebels of Disclosure. It's kind of more of like like a Star Wars theme. We don't want to. It just kind of brings out the inner child in people,
I'm
and it
bringing my lightsabers for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, for sure. And it's in May, so may the force be with you.
Oh my
Um,
god, that's perfect.
but it's just kind of like it's an exciting theme, I think, and it really captures the energy that we were
Mhm.
looking to capture, and I'm I'm excited.
Yeah,
Tickets
I'll
are on
say sorry,
Tickets
go
are
ahead.
on sale, rebelsofdisclosure.com, and there's an early bird special that ends at midnight on Black Friday. So anyone wanting a discounted ticket, you can go on the website and
Mhm.
find out about that. and
Mhm.
and the 4-day pass actually comes with a free T-shirt if you get the early bird ticket. So
Mhm. Awesome. I would highly recommend that, and I'll leave that information in the description for people. And I will say your conference is probably, I just started going to conferences the past 2 years, but I've already hit up like a pretty good amount. I've been like conference hopping, and I'd say I think your conference is my favorite. The
awesome,
energy and the people there is, I don't know. The people just feel like family.
right?
I like the vibe.
And that's it. Technically, it is family.
Yeah.
Like, there's that soul recognition there, even people like somebody asked, "Is it okay to go alone?" I'm like, "Actually, like, I would prefer that." Like, you don't have, like, anyone else to worry about, and you're gonna meet all these people that you only talked to online for years, you know?
Mhm.
You get to meet them in person, and you're gonna feel like you can just share from your heart, and you don't have to worry about being judged, and it's just incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, I went alone the first time. I was a little nervous. I was also
Mhm.
very new to the community. I think I had just started YouTube, but I met so many wonderful people through attending that. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a fun event.
Mhm, definitely. Well, thank you so much, Tyler. Do you have any other last things you wanna share?
No, I think that's it. Thank
Okay.
you for having me on,
Mm,
this was fun.
awesome. All right, and, yeah, guys, definitely go check out if you haven't checked out, Tyler's Journey to Truth podcast YouTube channel, that information will be in the description, and, their website also. And, all right, guys, have a good night. Bye.